What's up? We are having a little trouble, guys. Just hang on with us. Okay. Walaikum assalam. Just hang on with us, okay? I'm so sorry. This is the problem. This is the problem. I have had so many people coming in. I don't know why I can't find her. Hello. All right, we are here now.
Hello.
My goodness.
Sorry.
It has been a trial of error.
All right, we are
How
here
are
now.
you? Can you hear me?
I can hear you, but I won't be able to get on Instagram because this is on my phone. I can hear you.
Okay, so let's just forget about that. Let's just focus on this one, okay?
Sorry, let me get off of this one.
Okay, so let's just forget about.
I'm so sorry about this.
It's okay. It's okay. No worries.
Honestly, I don't use Facebook. So and I'm your friend, and I couldn't figure it out. I'll have to do that for the future.
It's okay. It's okay. No worries. So I will be recording this one, so I can obviously just post this in Instagram. Okay. So now we are in our Facebook group. All right. So this is actually the main platform where I share my lives and everything. Instagram is like a bonus. I try to get on that so that we can, help others as well. So let's just start because we are already a little behind the schedule. Is that okay? All right. So I would like to start by saying thanks to you. Thank you so much for being here with us. Okay. So I have already let my audience know who you are, but still I would like to give a little bit of a background. So our guest today here is Christine Muldoon. Did I,
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay. So she's a nutritional therapy practitioner, farmer educator, mom of 3. She specializes in perinatal and childhood nutrition, and believes that nourishing the body goes beyond just food, which is why we are here with you today. Okay. All right. So let's start with our first question, if you are ready.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the first question that you had asked was in regards to research about nutrition during pregnancy and how that affects the physical and the neurological development of the fetus.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the first, I was going to start with, have you heard of Weston A. Price or Price Pottinger?
I think so. I think
Okay.
so.
So I'm going to begin there, and then we'll go a little bit further into some of the other studies. But so basically, Weston A. Price was a dentist in the 1930s and 40s, and he traveled the world trying to figure out why it was that the modern man at that time were having so many health issues, and specifically in the mouth. And something that is not very well known in today's society is that our mouth is the window into the health of the rest of our body.
Yeah.
So if our facial structure is properly formed, if our teeth are not crowded, if we don't have dental cavities, then this is a sign that the rest of our body is doing well in health. So when he was traveling the world, some of the things, what he focused on was he wanted to go and look at the traditional cultures living all over the world, and this took him 10 to 15 years to do, and
Mm-hmm.
look at how was their health, what it was that they were eating, and then he compared them to the same individuals who would leave their indigenous cities and go into modern cities and begin eating what he called the displacing foods of modern commerce, which were canned foods, processed foods, sugar, and white flour. And
Mm-mm.
so he studied these two different groups of people. And what he found was that in just one generation, so the first generation are living in their traditional cultures, their kids go to the cities, their kids would then have narrow facial structures, crowded teeth, dental cavities, and the beginnings of physical degeneration. So the beginnings of ailments that we see today and that we call chronic disease. Um, and so he was fascinated by this connection, and this was why he took all of the food from different food samples from all over the world, sent them back to his lab in Ohio, and had them tested. And the commonalities that he found were that, number one, their food was 10 times higher in nutrients than the food people were consuming in the cities. And I can't even imagine how much higher it would be today,
Yeah.
knowing that our food supply is so devoid of nutrients today. So 10 times higher in the fat-soluble vitamins and minerals, and specifically the fat-soluble vitamins A, D, E, and K. K, he didn't know what vitamin K was at the time, so he called it activator X. So this is Weston A. Price. So this is one of the best nutritional studies that we have in regards to the correlation between what they're eating and what happens when these individuals leave their traditional diets and go to and begin consuming modern foods.
Yeah.
Another really interesting study done around the same time is by Price Pottinger, and he did a study on cats. This study is criticized wildly, but there's still some important takeaways. I mean, number one, we're not cats, we're humans, but I'm going to tell you about it anyway because it's fascinating. So he had two groups of cats. One group of cats he fed only unpasteurized milk and raw meat and cod liver oil. So basically the cats were on a raw food diet. And the second group of cats, he fed them pasteurized milk, cooked meat, and no cod liver oil. And basically just followed the health of the two groups. The first group of cats was able to reproduce and had healthy offspring without any issues. The second group of cats, similar to what Weston A. Price found, each generation got worse and worse, to the point that the fourth generation of cats was infertile. They were unable to reproduce. So it started out with allergies and musculoskeletal issues. Then it went from there to then it was more severe issues such as thyroid, pancreatic, glandular issues, and then the fourth generation, they were unable to reproduce.
I
So
want to chime in there. I want to chime in there because a lot of autism kids, a lot of autism kids have musculature problem. They cannot chew properly. Even my son, when we started with him, he could not chew his food. Okay, he would just gulp, like swallow his food, and he could not properly even use words and whatnot because we didn't understand, and the doctors couldn't even say properly. But when I started digging in deeper, I actually saw that he could not use his muscles properly,
right.
which is why he could not chew his food properly. So obviously the toxins that we are talking about, like now you have mentioned, those are connected to the stuff that we cannot, our, the kids cannot use their muscles of the mouth properly, or the tongues, and also they cannot use, like, hold on to things, because our children have problem with holding pens, holding water bottle, holding stuff, and cannot really proper and function properly. So it's actually kind of proven that the neurotoxins and also the toxins from the malabsorbed or maldigested food is creating all these dilemmas and troubles, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. No, you're right. Thank you for sharing that. That's so interesting. Yeah, that is going into some of the studies. So that is some of the information that we've seen, is that there is definitely a connection between the gut microbiome, specifically the gut microbiome of the mother, in relation to the development of the fetus and how well they do. I think that we are still learning about the gut microbiome. It's only recently that we've realized, oh my goodness, this is an incredibly important aspect of the human body, and it's a second brain, as many researchers call it. There's a connection between the gut microbiome and the brain, and they're constantly signaling back and forth. But anyway, and so the mothers. Okay, so moving back a little bit to. Sorry.
It's okay.
I have a kid at home, unfortunately.
It's all
But
right.
back to Pottinger and Weston A. Price. What I think the biggest takeaway from here is that nutrition matters, and specifically maternal nutrition matters. So we're caught up very much in this society. Some of these traditions have been lost. Of, we're going to get pregnant, and as soon as we're pregnant, we can eat whatever it is that we want, or there is no forethought put into the periconceptual period, which is the period before conception, the period in which we should be preparing our bodies for conception. Ideally, we're doing this at the very minimum 3 months before we decide to conceive, but in a perfect world, we would do it anywhere between 6 months and a year. And this would be when we clean up our diet, when we try to eliminate toxins. The diet of the father also matters in this case. And then we get pregnant.
Problem is, when I remember a few months ago, I wrote this blog post about the importance of mother nutrition and what happens to the child. And then I got backlashed by so many of my peers saying that I am saying all, garbage and whatnot. Why is that the doctors does not accept the importance of diet in our children? Like, why is that so? Why do you think is it like this?
That's such a good question. I think that this probably happens because doctors are, number one, they're not taught nutrition in medical school. At least here in the US, they only get 4 hours of nutrition. Number two, they are not taught preventative and like root cause health care. All they're doing is treating symptoms, and they're treating symptoms with pharmaceuticals versus actually getting to the root cause. And I'm not saying nutrition is the end all be all, but oftentimes it is. I mean, essentially, I personally believe that there's two modalities to health. There's your emotional health and your physical health. And your physical health is achieved through nutrition, and many other aspects. And your emotional health is achieved through your interpersonal connections with others, whether you've had trauma, whether you've been able to work through these traumas, those two things. So it's a shame that our doctors do not take into nutrition, because I imagine that there would be, I don't want to say less disease, because I mean, we live in a toxic world, but there would be more solutions, and we would probably have less chronic illness.
Yeah. That's so much true.
Frustrating.
So this is one of the reasons. The thing that you have said goes so well with what I teach here, also the program that I have built. Because over here, what we do is not just think about the nutrition of the child. I make sure that the mother's mental health is also on par. So a lot of people can think, I have already given birth to my child. My child has problem, developmental delay. So why is my emotion important yet now? What do you say that?
Yes.
It's still
Oh my
important.
goodness, that's such a good question. Okay, so the way a child's brain works is, as they're infants all the way, until young children. I mean, the prefrontal cortex is not fully developed until they are 25. So until our kids are 25, their brains are still developing, and we are an integral part of that, because especially when they're babies and younger, we help them regulate their emotions through something called co-regulation. This means that we are supporting them in the daily regulation of their emotions. As babies, it's physical, it's, with our words, we're actually holding them, we're soothing them. As they get older, we are modeling how to regulate emotions, and the only way to do that is if we can do it. So the only way to teach our kids how to regulate their emotions is when we as adults are showing them how to do it. Many of us as adults were never taught how to do this as kids. I mean, I'm a perfect example. My mother, I love her to death, but I did not learn self-regulation skills from her. And I know that I'm not the only individual that's out there that, can go crazy because we just are not sure, and we're never taught how to manage our emotions. So when individuals are taught how to properly self-regulate, then their executive function is higher, their ability to make sense of the world is better, and there's less chances of mental health disease in the future. So any trauma that we've experienced as kids, it's important to try and work through that anytime in your life, even as an adult, so that there are less probability of developing mental health disorders in the future, but also so that we can help our own kids.
Yeah, totally. You are just speaking my heart.
I know. I completely understand.
Okay, so let's move on to the next question, because it's just getting more juicier and juicier. Oh my gosh. I love you already, okay? All right. So in your experience, how connected do you see the nutrition and health of a mom is acting towards the development of the unborn child's brain development, specifically brain development? Okay.
Right. Okay. So the first thing I want to talk about is going back to having the mother prepare her terrain. So the mother's terrain would be her own gut microbiome. And the importance of preparing this before preconception if possible. And if you can't, just making sure that you're doing the most that you can when you're pregnant. The reason this is because as the mother, we pass on our terrain to our babies, especially if, so as I'm sure you're aware, it's better for babies to be birthed vaginally if possible. They are inoculated through the vaginal canal with all of mother's bacteria, good and bad. And this also means all of mother's gut health issues as well. And so how this affects brain development, and so this is the gut
and the brain connection.
Yeah, the gut brain connection. And so one of the things that some of these gut bacteria do is that they help us make vitamins, they support our immune system, they're necessary to detoxify. These are all aspects that are necessary in the neural development of the fetus. And on top of that, there is also the aspect of nutrition. So what nutrients, what specific micronutrients the mother is getting, which are then going to be passed on to the baby. So if she is deficient in certain nutrients, then the fetus is not going to be able to, the fetus will lack these nutrients, and the neural and the development of the brain will be lacking. So specifically, some of the biggest factors in regards to maternal nutrition are folate, iron, choline, DHA. So these
DHA.
are some, yeah, DHA. So these are some of the biggest. These can be, a lot of mothers have nutritional deficiencies in these, and they can cause issues in the developing fetus. So, for example, folate deficiencies cause. Sorry, I have my notes right here. I'm just
Yeah,
checking.
sure.
Yeah. Okay. So folate deficiencies can cause like neural tube defects, for example. Choline causes, there's issues with cognitive function with choline. Iodine deficiencies can cause cognitive issues. Iodine is essential for the production of thyroid hormones, and mother needs to produce tons of thyroid hormones when she's pregnant. And so if mother is deficient in iodine, then this means baby's thyroid development is not going to be as robust. Zinc deficiencies cause poor learning, attention, and memory issues, and mood problems. These are just a few of the micronutrient deficiencies that can have an impact on fetal neural development.
Wow. And it actually goes congruent because we girls, we have periods. And since we are every month shedding blood, we do not actually consciously drink lots of iron rich stuff or eat lots of iron rich stuff. So there is already a little bit of deficiency inside of almost all the girls are in the, on that age. So it makes total sense and whatnot. All right.
Yeah.
So in that note, I would like to ask, what neurological and developmental delays can be connected to nutrition? For example, like speech delay, cognitive. You have mentioned cognitive already here. Like choline is important for cognitive abilities, developmental, right? So in terms of that, the neurological development and the nutrition, what kind of nutrition deficiencies can cause neurological delays, like, brain fog, comment following, lack of communication, and stuff like that?
Right. So, okay, going back to the top ones are folate and B12 deficiencies, and what they cause is neural tube defects, as I mentioned. B12 deficiency disrupts the neural myelination in the brain. So if there is, and these are more common in vegan or vegetarian moms, but if there is a lack of B12 vitamins, then the myelination of the neurons is not going to be as robust. This can lead to an increased risk in depression in adults, abnormal behavior, abnormal development in infants, and cognitive delays. So this is folate and B12 deficiencies. Iron deficiency, which is the most common nutritional deficiency in the world, specifically in developing countries and in women, of course. And so iron deficiencies mostly affect women and children. And some of the severe and chronic iron deficiencies could result in impaired cognitive development, psychomotor skills, behavior issues, things like this. For children, iron deficiency develops slowly over time. It's not something that happens quickly overnight. And a few symptoms would be things like they're really tired, they're not gaining weight, there's frequent respiratory or intestinal infections, lack of energy, weakness, paleness, things like this. Iron is absolutely essential for normal anatomic development of the fetal brain. And so and it's also a precursor to serotonin and dopamine. So we really
Mood
making sure
regulators.
that pregnant women are consuming enough protein. And in my personal opinion, animal protein is really necessary for fetal development. In addition, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm said definitely.
Oh, okay. So we mentioned DHA, and DHA is necessary for the formation of the neurons and the synthesis of important brain lipids. It's basically what it does is it protects the neurons against oxidative stress. So DHA for mothers would be the omega-3s, and that can be found in, the smaller fatty fish. So sardines, anchovies, oysters, mackerel, exactly. Cod liver oil for those that are consuming, fermented cod liver oil. DHA, we mentioned choline. Vitamin A is essential for all musculoskeletal formation and formation of organs in the fetus. These are not specifically brain, you're right. But it's still, it's important.
Yeah, connects. They are all connected one together, right?
For sure. But yeah.
For sure.
So those would be the top nutrients that I would recommend.
All right. So the fact that we see a lot of parents want to supplement the nutrients via, rather than changing the diet, they find it easier to just supplement. So as a expert yourself in nutrition, I tell it all the time, but I want them to hear it from you as well. How much good is supplement versus the real food, getting the nutrients from the real food?
Totally. So as I'm sure your community is aware, there is a scale of supplements as well. So some of them, if they're synthetic supplements, they're not going to be as effective as a real food supplement. There are real food supplements and we can have access to those. However, as you mentioned, it is still better to consume the actual food itself. Why? Because nature is perfect and nature packages it in the way it is meant to be. A supplement is copying nature, and sometimes not in the best way. So for example, if you're taking just a zinc supplement versus consuming an oyster has the full package of the zinc with the copper, with the selenium, with the B vitamins, versus just the zinc. And if you're, depending on how your zinc and copper ratios are, you could be harming yourself by taking a zinc supplement and not balancing it with copper, for example.
Exactly.
So I really believe that food in its purest form and prepared properly is not a replacement for supplements. Now, that being said, there are many cases in which supplements are necessary, specifically on healing protocols or cleanses, things like that. But to just say, well, I'm not going to eat so-and-so food, I'm just going to take a supplement instead. I mean,
that's not gonna cut.
It's hard for people to eat liver, so I understand. I would say a liver supplement is better than no liver at all, but it's better to eat the liver if you can manage it.
Yeah, definitely. And there are so many other ways of getting micronutrients and also minerals as well. It just does not have to be, let's say you cannot accept the taste of liver, which I myself cannot. So what I do is I eat lots of green vegetables, green leafy vegetables, kale, spinach, and all those things. So it kind of balances out. And sometimes I use, when I'm, having period, then what I do is I usually use iron supplement to boost that up, because to boost whatever I am already eating in the first place. But if I am thinking of just not eating the food, but just getting the supplement, it's not going to give me and also my child the real boost support that he needs to grow properly, right?
Right, for sure. I completely agree.
All right. So over here, we talk a lot about the connection between gut and neurology, okay, in Autism Success Academy. So in your experience, how important are they connected?
How important is the connection?
Yeah, gut and the neurological development.
Right. Extremely important. So when working with kids, a lot of times I will see erratic behavior, behavior issues, um, emotional emotional issues, things like that. And many times it is connected to the gut. And when we clean up the child's gut, so when we clean up their diet, when we rebalance their gut microbiome, eliminate the excess yeast, the candida, things like that, then a lot of these behavior issues, they will improve, and in some cases they'll disappear. There is definitely a connection between the gut and the brain, and specifically how kids are behaving. I know that this is not related to the gut, but I also want to throw in the conversation about blood sugar regulation. So oftentimes part of the reason why another piece of this is blood sugar dysregulation. So our kids are eating, their diets are heavy in carbs and low in protein and fat, and so they'll have bursts of energy and their behavior is off the wall, and then they'll have a crash a few hours later because their body has no long-term energy to sustain them. And then again, they're whiny, they're cranky, they're hungry all the time, and this also affects their behavior and their daily interaction with others and things like that.
Quality of life. Quality of life. This is exactly what I tell all the time, that when we can clean up the gut, detoxify the body, okay, clean up the system and balance the gut flora and whatnot, then a lot of the behavior issues, a lot of the meltdowns, tantrum, and the problems that we autism mom usually has to go through because of our kids, and they're also struggling. It's not like have to handle them, it's they who are having the trouble in the first place. They are struggling through all of that. So when I have seen it come many times with my children, with my clients, kids and whatnot, I have always seen that whenever we balance out their gut, the kids' mood becomes better. Their focus becomes better. They are more attentive when you are giving command. They are understanding the thing, versus the therapies that we usually are always told to take our kids to and whatnot, because therapies are like training the kid, whereas what we are doing is we are building the system of the child in a way that his developments are on par. He's getting all the nutrition properly or as much as possible, and then there is no much of dysregulation, which will lead on to the behavior issues, the mood, the sleep problem as well. A lot of our kids also have sleep problems, like they cannot sleep until 2-3 a.m. or maybe wake up a few times during the night, which is also not having a good effect on the child as well as us in a long way, right? So what I was saying is, like, from you, what are the top 5 tips that we can keep our gut and our brain of the kids healthy? What can we do for that?
So I want to go back just a little bit and mention that when we are cleaning up the gut microbiome, that is a root cause solution. So if just doing therapy, the therapies are helpful, of course, but when we're actually focusing on how we can heal and seal the gut and replenish the gut with beneficial bacteria, eliminate parasites, yeast, candida, things like that. These are the root causes of many of the other symptoms issues that our kids are exhibiting. Yeah. Right. So it's great to pair the two together, because just working on the therapies alone is not enough. So, okay. The top 5 tips. I had to think about this one, actually. But
sure.
So yeah, it was a good question. So the first one that I would recommend is nutrition, obviously. Really cleaning up the diet. And when I say cleaning up the diet, I mean reducing and eliminating processed foods as much as possible. Eating whole foods. eating local, seasonally, and if you can afford it, organic. This will, when you're eating organic, you are reducing the amount of pesticides and,
Chemicals in general.
yeah, just chemicals on your food in general, specifically glyphosate, which is an antibiotic, but that's a conversation for another time. And also properly preparing foods. This is going back to Weston A. Price. This is one of the findings that he encountered when he was studying all of these different cultures. Is they had very specific methods of preparing certain foods. And some of these foods were grains, nuts, seeds, and legumes. And in some cases, certain types of plants as well. So in order to properly absorb, in order that these foods are not causing harm on our body, we want to make sure that we're properly preparing them. That could be a conversation for another time as well. But
yeah, it's a long issue.
Yeah. In addition to nutrition, well, along with this, I want to talk about fermented foods. Really, really emphasizing the consumption of fermented foods. And there's so many different varieties of fermented foods. We can consume kimchi, sauerkraut, pickles. Those are some fermented foods. You can get fermented foods through
Yogurt.
kefir, yogurt, right? Cottage cheese, cheese. There's kombucha, there's water kefir, coconut kefir. I realize that fermented foods are a different flavor profile, and if we don't start our kids out on them really young, it's difficult to get them to like them because it is so it's strong.
That's strong.
But
yeah.
the earlier we can begin introducing fermented foods into their diet, the better.
The better.
And so, for example, for a kid who would not consume sauerkraut, one thing you could do is you take a teaspoon of the sauerkraut juice and you just put it into a smoothie. And just the brine itself gives them the beneficial bacteria that their gut needs. Most people would say probiotics as well. And yes, probiotics are helpful. However, 1 teaspoon of sauerkraut is going to have way more bacteria in it than a probiotic pill. It's just
exactly
what it is.
Exactly. I get a lot of them saying like which probiotic to it, and I'm like, sister, first start with the foods and whatnot, and then add that one. It's like a supplement. It's not the main deal. Exactly. But they're like, no, exactly. Please just tell me which brand to use.
I know, for sure, because the pill is easier. I get it.
Yeah.
And we live in a society that loves quick fixes. So yeah, number 1 is nutrition. Number 2 is kind of how I said at the beginning. It's the way we parent our kids. And in my experience, I really find that respectful parenting helps with that brain development. So again, going back to the self-regulation, it's the foundation for executive function, higher level cognition, everything. And so when we are helping our kids, when we're co-regulating with them, when we're helping them tolerate discomfort through life and things like that, then they are learning self-regulation. And this is such a huge piece of brain development. So there's 2 books that I wanted to recommend that I think are fabulous when it comes to parents just learning a little bit more about how a child's brain works and how they can parent their child thinking of the whole brain. Is The Whole Brain Child by Dan Siegel. And he really goes into how a child's brain works and what we can do to how we can interact with them. And I mean, it's fascinating. And then the other is called First Feelings by Stanley Greenspan.
What's his name?
Stanley Greenspan.
Stanley. Okay. All right. Because I'm writing all these things so that I can, share with the folks later on.
Perfect. And then my 3 other recommendations would be spending time outside. Outside as much as possible, because yes, we can diversify our gut microbiome by eating fermented foods and probiotics, but the other way you do that is by spending time outside. So going to different types of nature. So going in forests, going to creeks, going in playgrounds, just getting dirty. It's okay for kids to get dirty. It's okay for them to play in the dirt, to play in the leaves. If possible, they can go barefoot if they can tolerate it. So actually grounding with the ground beneath them. I mean, that's, sending signals into their body. It's electrical. We are electrical beings. It's so important for them to connect with the earth as much as possible. And then I would also say play. So limiting screen time as much as possible and play, specifically independent play. We are a species that play, believe it or not. Even as adults, we play. And play is another way that kids' brains are formed. They learn through it. It's how they explore the world. It's how they make sense of the world. And kids will play up until 14, 15 years of age, even more. I mean, if we let them. And it's so therapeutic to just give them the opportunity to play. And one piece I want to say, and this is really hard because as parents, sometimes we get so excited, but to sit back and observe and not teach them how to play. So we might be tempted to show them how a certain toy works or show them how to use the crayon, but just refrain and let them explore and let them use their toys or play in a manner that is
Not be a helicopter parent, right?
Yeah, totally.
I totally understand that because I'm like, let them be bored. What we usually do is when we see our kids get bored, we get them new toys or we get them the screen time. We just don't let them get bored and, be a kid. Just, like, I am bored, give me some attention and whatnot. But we are like, no, just get busy and stay away from me. That's easier for me.
Get bored. Get bored is so important. It's necessary. It's how their creative juices start flowing.
Totally.
Usually when I have the get bored doesn't happen until they're a little bit older. So I do have a 7-year-old, and every once in a while he'll come down and be like, I'm bored, I have no toys. And that's when I say, perfect, you can help me with chores around the house. And then he's quickly like, no, never mind, I'll find something to do.
I'm fine as long as it's not a chore.
Yeah.
All right, so we have had a lot of discussion on it, and I have gotten so much of real deal from you. Thank you so much for that. As a summary, because you put on this emotional health of mother, okay, and this is so much of an integral part that I teach. I try to advocate as well as empower my community as well as my clients and whatnot. I would like you to focus a little bit on the emotional regulation importance for the mother and how that affects the development of the child, specifically those who are having developmental delays. How important is our emotional health as to our child's?
Right. Okay. So the way that we were raised as kids impacts the way we're raising our kids today. So the way our parents, everything that our parents did is filtering into how we're raising our kids today. So this could be an example that I obviously work with a lot with my clients is at the dinner table. Everything that you were told as a kid, oftentimes about food at the dinner table, oftentimes the parents are doing the exact same thing to their kids. Whether it's you have to finish your entire plate of food before you can get up from the table, whether it's you can't eat dessert unless you finish your plate of food, whether it's you have to try this one piece, all of that is impacting our kids. So being aware of that, which is really difficult because a lot of this is in our subconscious. We are not aware that our subconscious is controlling how we're speaking to our kids, how we're interacting with them on a regular basis. And so awareness is the first key. And how does this happen? This happens when a perfect example would be when you are triggered. So something happens between you and a child and you snap. That moment when you snap. You're not snapping because the child is quote unquote misbehaving. that child is acting exactly as they are supposed to act, appropriately according to their age and their cognitive abilities. Something that that child said or did caused a subconscious reaction inside of you. A memory got triggered, and that's why you snapped.
Stop.
And so being aware of that and realizing, wait a second. And these floods of emotions last only 90 seconds in the body. So if you can literally just set your timer and say, I really want to, just like scream at my child or do whatever it is, if you can set the timer and say, okay, in 90 seconds, this flood of emotions is literally going to pass through, and then think about it. What did that child do? Why is it that they triggered me? And reflect on it. And that is a lifetime work. That is a lifetime of work. I mean, I am only 7 years into this, and I'm still discovering things about myself every day that I didn't know. And so this is not an overnight fix. This is just, it's reflection, it's meditation, it's journaling. But the first step, and really the hardest step, is being aware. And sometimes you become aware after the fact. So sometimes the drama has happened, you've snapped, you've yelled at your child or whatever it is, and then in hindsight you realize, wait a second, what was it that that child did that caused me to yell? What feelings in my childhood do I have, or that brought that up? What truths or lies am I telling myself that are impacting how I'm parenting today?
Totally understandable. I
I don't know if that
specifically
answers the
learned a
question.
lot. Can you hear me?
Yeah. No, I said I don't know if I answered the question.
Yeah, you did. You
Completely.
did a lot, girl. Because I have, after I went through my own trauma healing and I learned a lot of tools and modalities, that's when I was like, dang, I need to just, teach others. Because so much of how I show up as a mom has to do with how my childhood was. Because I came from a very abusive childhood. I have had severe trauma regarding that, and it's a different issue to bring up. But I do understand how I behave with my children is how I have been raised, so to speak.
Yeah.
So we have two questions. One is not like a question, it's like a command. Pooja has summed up what we said, like the first five, the top five of your tips. The first one was nutrition. Second one is effective or conscious parenting. Third one is nature walk or time outside. Fourth is physical independence or playing and exploring. And what should be the fifth one?
I know. I thought really hard about the fifth one. I couldn't think of a fifth one. I would. So I really just had four, and the fourth one would be play. So
Play, or I would say, like, how about your own emotional health being a part? Our own emotional well-being being a part. It totally works with it. So that would be the fifth point, I would say.
We'll add that
Okay.
as the fifth one. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. So we have a question from Sarah. She says, is there a comeback from all of this if the damage has already been done? For example, my daughter is turning 4. She is a picky eater. So bad nutrients and has a lot of screen time. So when left with others while going to work, I mean, probably she meant was she left her child with some other people and then they gave her a lot of screen time. So her question is, since the damage is done, is there a way to recover all of this? Her daughter is 4 years. Her daughter is 4-year-old. Yeah.
4. Okay.
So can she recover her delays and everything?
Okay, right. So the first thing I want to say to this mother is the damage has not been done. Yes, there's been some delays, but I want to encourage her to not think in this black and white idea of, oh my goodness, I've ruined my child for the rest of their life. They're only 4. And it's totally possible to make lifestyle changes so that you can improve. They will be difficult, obviously, and this would have to be the caregivers would have to be extremely conscious to actively make these changes. So in the example, so about the screen time, you just limit it little by little every day, and that would look different for every family. So some families might choose to cut it off completely and just say, you know what, we're not going to do screen time anymore. And if you cut it off completely, then you would need to be more supportive in regards to playing with the child, or making sure that that the play environment is set up for the child, so that they have a safe space where they can play and that kind of thing. Or you could do it gradually, and gradually could be, and through this whole change, I would talk to your child and say, you know what, mommy and daddy, we let you watch a lot of TV before, but we're gonna change things up. We're not gonna do that anymore. We're only gonna watch 1 hour of TV today, for example. And instead, let's go outside and play, or let's go to the park, or whatever works for that family. That's one way to work with the screen time. And then as far as the food is concerned, that is, again, the child is only 4 years old. I want to talk a little bit about picky eating real quick in this question, which is that there is a normal picky eating stage, which is completely developmentally appropriate. It's usually between 18 months to 3-ish, 4-ish years of age. And this is because kids are beginning to develop their independence. Their language is starting to blossom, and they're realizing that they can have control over their own body, and they can say no. And
they can
so
say
they're
no.
yeah. And so a neurotypical developing child, when it comes to picky eating, this is actually a good thing. It's them exhibiting their independence and just practicing, what is mom going to do, or what is dad going to do if I say, no, I'm not going to eat that broccoli. And just, that's normal. Okay. There are obviously variations of normal, and the way it can get, we can go down a slippery slope is if parents are catering to the child's every whim. So if the child only wants bread, pasta, sweets, things like that, and the parents say, okay, fine, it's easier for me to just feed the breads, the sweets, and the pastas, then that's when there can become a gut imbalance. And that's when it goes from being just a typical picky eating
To the problem feeder.
developmental stage, to now we're talking about gut imbalances are at play here, where it's not the child is denying the healthier foods, not just because they don't want them, but because their body is literally craving the sugar from the pastas, the sweets, the breads, you name it, the carbohydrates, essentially.
Exactly.
Which I'm aware are very common in autism spectrum kids, because I know that they are born with a lot of gut dysbiosis and things like that.
Exactly. And in my experience, what I have seen is, rather than fighting with them or preparing like 10-15 types of food, what really works is when I totally start working on balancing the gut first, and then the picky eating slowly and very surely subsides. Very surely subsides. When we start doing in that way, in that manner, everything just comes together, because it's just all natural. It's all how nature wanted us to be, and it wants us to be raising our kids and whatnot. And it's just natural, and it's just healthy and good. What should good food do bad in your life, right?
Right.
A lot of parents say like, oh, my child doesn't want to eat this. It's not actually he's showing tantrum. It's his gut microbiome as well as the phase. So when you understand why something happens, it's actually easier to solve that problem, rather than not understanding the root cause and then trying to find so many other solutions, like external environment. Okay.
Right.
Like focusing on the external environment rather than the internal environment, what's going on inside the body. Right. Okay, so we have another question saying like, what would you advise about outdoor times when the weather is not nice? Because we are in, Canada and stuff like that. We have very bad weathers.
Well, let me tell you, I used to live in Chicago for 5 years, and our kids went outside. It did not matter how cold it was. You bundle them up. You just get really, really good snowsuits and snow boots and gloves and hats. And cold therapy is so good for kids. So even if it's cold outside, and more than the kids, if the kids are bundled up properly, they don't care. They'll have fun and they will play. It's the adults for us where it's a little bit harder because, we're not running around and playing, we're just standing. So just making sure that the adults are really, really well, dressed, properly dressed, so you can play outside. The
I
only
do the
weather
same
that
thing.
my kids were, so when my kids went to school in Chicago, the only time that they would not go outside and play was if it was below 20 degrees Fahrenheit, which is pretty cold. So they were playing in 20 degrees and up. Didn't matter rain or shine, snow. It's possible.
Yeah, over here also the daycares and the schools, they actually encourage the kids to play outside like 2 or 3 hours every day, because that really works a lot. And when your kid is playing outside, rain or or shine, he's building immunity. That's another important thing for him. And he's getting tired, he's getting grounded. It's easier to put him to bed, right, that way. So it's this win-win. Just get bundled up and then go run.
Yep, I couldn't agree more.
Okay, so with that, we are actually at the end of the session, and I think we would really love to have you again, because you have said so much of the very, very essential stuff that we have learned today, and we would like to continue more if you agree. But today it's just up to this one, and thank you so much. So if our community people wants to follow you or find you, where can they find you?
Yes. So as I mentioned before, I am not active on Facebook, but they can find me on Instagram, or I do have a website. And so on Instagram, it's Nourish the Littles, and my website is nourishthellittles.com.
Mashallah. Okay, I'll also pull all those details in the description after this session and whatnot. Thank you so much for coming back. We'll see you soon, okay?
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Tasnuba. I appreciate it.
Bye.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Bye, everyone. Thank you for coming and staying here. Thanks to everyone. She has left us. Thank you so much for whoever has come down. Yeah, I will write them down. Thank you for being with us despite the shaky starting of the live here today. So I'll see you soon. Okay, bye.